ever thought of, or some maybe 90% is not or not useful, but the last few percent can be very valuable.
Yeah, and it's funny, I mean, spatial hypertext is one of the few bits really surviving in the original Hypertext Conference. It's one of the few strands that didn't get killed off by the web. And it's still sort of pottering along. I mean, it's sad in a way, you know, but there's no research money, and this has been the problem. So hopefully the papers anyway may give us some ideas.
You're early.
Yeah, well, you know.
Not a bad thing. Anyway,
what a nice bookcase you have there, Frode.
Thank you. The coolest thing about this bookcase is this section here is generally people who are in the book. Or this one. It's been a bit like that. Yeah, this one. Still about there. Yeah. But let's not talk about books. Mark Anderson is on this call, and that will be very expensive when he points out.
Yeah, because that's just actually the other. It was last year. There was a comment about too many books on the floor, and I think I've assembled 4 or 5 IKEA Billy bookcases, all of which are already full, and the books stacking on the floor now.
Yep. Everybody's so punctual.
Oh, these guys were early.
Yeah.
I was still making my iced mocha.
Right.
Nice.
So yeah, I'm slowly recovering from the week-long flu, cold, whatever it was. And Raphael and I had a brief chat about having some sort of a cover statement. Raphael, you got what I sent you, right?
Yes, I have received it. What I was thinking is just to do a little bit of layout, just to have the information structured like an information sheet and less like an email, but it's in the body of the email. So I'll send it to you today.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, now we can keep working on that offline. I'm just mentioning it to the group because 2 things. One, we really need to be more active in getting more people, famous or not, as long as they are really interested in some aspect of text. And Adam, you are a teacher, right? Are there any students you think may be interested in this? Because we have to decide, first of all, are we going to have a student competition? And if not, are we just going to invite some students?
Well, I'm a drama teacher, or was before the pandemic. Now it's drama at home instead.
There is that. So, but yeah, we need to think about that more. And also the history of text. I'm putting more effort into that, and there's quite a few people beginning to send in things. So it's also something that if you guys have something to share, please just keep sending, but please try to do it with a year, because there's been a few times been sent in, oh, this general thing, oh, great. Now I've spent another 3 hours backing that up, right? So that would be really, really cool, because obviously what we can do once we have a PDF that's volume 1, volume 2, and a timeline, the way you can jump about stuff, it's just so much more interesting. And additionally, I've asked Mark to maybe contribute more to the specific ACM history of hypertext, including spatial hypertext that you guys were just talking about. So that will probably be an appendix at the back of the timeline, similar to, have you seen the new version I sent you, Mark?
Not yet. I'm pedaling like mad to try and get paper out for hypertext at the end of this week, which is a Friday night's a deadline. And I'm doing it with Dave and Claire Hooper, who's across in Canada, so it's all going to be a bit fun. Essentially, a small side project turned into a major thing. So I have documented 30 odd years of one particular conference to do a citation analysis, because you can't, there aren't tools to do this. There are in theory, but actually, if you go and look, you can't go to a paper at the moment and say, what are all the things that came before this? What's the sort of knowledge graph going backwards? So I thought, well, what I need is a reasonable sized body of work, and then I can create my own graph. But after that, all sorts of other insights have come out. Most noticeably, actually, just how much gets lost with conferences. Effectively, the main thing is they publish the papers, which then act like a journal. But all the information about the exhibitions that went on with it, the workshops, the tutorials, is all lost. So I've been delving around the Wayback Machine, finding old, broken, early hypertext, websites, pulling stuff out. Gunter.
So in the history book now, with Nils Ole Finneman, Danish guy, he wrote an appendix on notes on the complexities of simple things such as a timeline. So he's basically written a whole long piece on why timelines are difficult. So, if somebody wants to write an appropriate timeline level thing, that would also be quite good.
Cool.
Because the key is, of course, I'm very happy to have, the physical book.
Mm-hmm.
So now that we're having more and more structured data, we can do amazing things with it, right? Isn't that part of our big hope?
I'd be interested to see that guy's article, actually, just to see what.
It's in the PDF you have. So when you have a chance, you can just find it there.
Oh, right. Sorry. So it's in the current book.
Yeah.
Yeah. So okay. No, I need to get to that because see if there's anything actionable that I can use in that. Sorry, Gunther had his hand up.
Oh, sorry. Hi, Gunther.
Hi. I was just wondering, how do you print the citation graph? By hand or automatically?
No, at the moment it's in a large Tinderbox document. So this is a tool.
Okay.
It's Mark Bernstein's tool that sort of grew out of Story Space slightly. So I basically documented it's about 1,000 papers, short and long papers, but in overall items, it's about 1,400 items. And one of the things I wanted to do was to see how much people were citing in conference or not. And that you can actually see a thing that was known to have occurred. So in about the 2000s, Hypertext Conference almost died because everyone went off to play with the web, and the money all moved away. And the conference moved out to embrace social networks. And so the paper count recovers quite quickly, but the people citing in conference suddenly fall off a cliff because the social networks people didn't have much prior art. And they don't seem to do much referencing anyway. I mean, most of that stuff is people just writing out, algorithms with a sort of social networks banner over the top. So it's quite different to the somewhat more, perhaps more scholarly stuff that's been going on in the area. But so I haven't visualized it. But my start point was that paper. I think I posted a picture a while back of a thing called Cytology. CITE, and it was done by Autodesk, and it was a Java project. And sadly, it was never anything. You can't find it anywhere, and it's almost rolled off the Autodesk Labs report sites as well. There is a paper you can find online about it, but it was really quite elegant because there was a timeline, and you could sort of scrub along it, and so you could click on a paper. And you'd see one way, you'd see links going back to previous papers, and the other way, you'd see links to papers that cited this paper. And I thought that was a really, really elegant way of exploring a sort of group, an area of interest. But timelines, I think, have been the poor cousin for a long time. I think partly because they are hard. Because hard in the sense of the lumpiness of the data. In other words, you see all these things that look lovely, but what most demonstrations show someone doing like their family pictures, they're all nicely spread out and something. When you put real world data into a timeline, you need to do all sorts of crazy stuff. Like you want to be able to concertina dead periods. Otherwise, if it's the same level zoom all the way along, you get big empty bits. We have a timeline that goes back to way past, past history, thousands of years ago.
In a way, you'd like to see both views at the same time. The full timeline to see where it's placed, where the lumps are placed in time, but also the concertina view, the compressed view.
Yeah, I mean, there was a very nice thing done. There was a project called Simile, SIMILE, which was at the CSAIL, that's CSAIL lab in MIT, and it's a project that's sort of moribund now, but they did a quite interesting set of tools that included a timeline that allowed you to do quite a lot of clever things. But sadly, it sort of rather died off, and it was just before HTML5. So it's a real pig to work. You can use it, but it's a real pig to work with. And in fact, that was the tool that when I showed you that the itinerary of King John thing, I think I showed you guys the other day, that was what was used to make that thing that had the timeline and mash up with a map, which is another really cool thing to do with not for our data, but it's another cool thing to do with timelines. You know, so you can scrub along and you can actually sort of see where things happen.
This is an interesting thing for you, Gunther, to do as one of your initial pieces, a timeline view.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, in that regard, yeah, I'd really like. I mean, it's your personal process, of course, but I'd be interested in seeing how you do your work in Tinderbox, particularly regarding. So,
Yeah, I can.
So
I mean, I've got it open, but I can show perhaps a bit later if we don't have more, you know, if we don't have more pertinent things to discuss.
I think everyone would be interested in that, I think, right?
Okay, well, I can give you, let me just find, where is it? So let's get that up on the screen. And I will share. Where are we? This one. Okay, and so can you see the screen here?
Yep.
Yeah, good. Okay, so the tool you're looking at is a tool called Tinderbox, which Peter will know. And this is it's hard to describe, but it's really a kind of a toolbox. Underneath it's an XML outline, but that's just one of the ways it's stored. One of the things that's quite nice about it is it has multiple views built into it. So,
Mark, you're not running Liquid. We need a chat later.
Oh no, I had to close down a whole lot of things because it was overloaded a while back, because I'm only running off a Mac. I've got a MacBook Air running two 24-inch external
Just teasing you.
monitors.
Anyway.
So you can essentially you can show this data in all sorts of terms. Because I've got so much data, I'm mainly using an outline. So what I went and did was just close that up a second. Everything's chugging a bit here because I don't know what, there's nothing much I can close down at the moment. So what I went to the ACM conference. I started collecting information about all the conferences and all the papers they're in, and the different colors are basically, Tinderbox has a very nice prototyping system where you can adopt a sort of styling quite quickly across multiple notes and you know, change that. So it works a bit like a CSS in some ways in a web page. So I've been collecting stuff. So this is a paper, it's a full paper, 10 pages. It made 7 references. It's been cited 8 times by other people at the conference, which is 12 pages in all, and 1 or 2 other bits and pieces. And I basically was extracting plain text files because a colleague wanted to do some machine learning on it. And this was one of the things that led me down the hole of seeing this problem, which I can show you actually on here.
Mark, a quick question.
Yeah.
How can someone cite a document at the conference they're already on? Shouldn't you submit the papers at the same time? How does that work?
I think, do you know, I don't know. I mean, I think you if you know it's going to happen, I think probably what you could do is arrange. I would contact the you know, the conference chair. There probably is some method that they have for doing that, but you don't that often see stuff. So you're talking about 2 papers that go into the same conference the same year, citing one another.
It's interesting.
Am I understanding? Yeah. Okay. But for instance, just showing you on screen here, that this is something that seems to be not much thought about. And this is just one of the problems about taking text out of a PDF. So you get 2 things you commonly see. Is one is all these highlighted bits are where words are all smooshed together to form one word, which a machine learning tool will just assume is one word because it doesn't understand the syntax. And I don't think they're written to sort of think about things like this. And then the other one you see down here is where it does this weird thing where it puts a letter between every character. You see it a lot more on older OCR, but I mean the data set here starts in 1987. The only other bug, and one I've mentioned, you see in more recent stuff, is where people have turned on things like ligatures.
But Mark,
yep.
Without spending too much on the PDF rant, can we look at the cool timeline stuff, please?
The timeline stuff. That was in Eon. That I did.
No. I think how you well, what are you doing in Tinderbox, or rather?
Oh, sorry. Okay.
What do you think Gunter asked for? Because I'm also confused now because there's so many opportunities.
Well, I think he wanted to see how I'd assembled this. So in this master data set, I'm not using a timeline. There is a timeline view built in here, but it would just get way too crowded, and I haven't set up enough metadata to do that. Because one of the things you also start to consider is you probably want to start stranding the data. So, and you might want it, so you can do it in several strands. You might want to say, right, I want to see all the papers from North America in a separate band to the ones from Europe. Or I might want to see all the things that are about subject X or subject Y. Sorry, why don't I put the camera, put the people roughly where the camera is. So yeah, you get that issue. But effectively, what I've done here is I've got each author. So I've pulled out 2,500 authors, which actually boil down to, because of name variations, to about 2,400 people. Each author is, sorry, everything's running a bit slow, come on. Each author is linked to the paper that they have. So that the note I showed you above, and I can actually show that more easily by, if I just go into here and hit one of these and show the roadmap. So this is showing me in this paper. So has a link to all the paper it cites, and it has a link from each author document inbound to it, because links in Tinderbox are directional. You can traverse them navigationally, but they are created with a direction.
Mark, which the dialog box we're looking at now is called Roadmap. Is that your title, or is that a title of the Tinderbox thing?
No, that's a title. That's a thing that's been in Tinderbox since, I think 2000, when it was first designed.
What is it? An inspector or editor, or what kind of a thing is it?
It's just a window in the app, and what it's doing is so this note here, Beeman et al. It's showing me the data for the note called Beeman et al. And it's showing me all the inbound links. And in this case, there are no outbound links. And so that's the name of the note that's linking to it. That's the data, that's the link type. So I put some metadata on the link so that I can see citation links as being different from authoring links. This little icon here is just a badge that I can apply to help me tell what sort of note I'm looking at. It's just that's just a visual decoration within the application. And I can actually do some editing here, so I can sort of change the link type. So I could change this from author to something else, which I won't do, so I don't break anything. And I can play with some of the styling of links, which you don't see here. If I was to look at this in a map view, I'll see if I can.
Just out of curiosity, Mark, did you consider having reverse link types too? I see you authored, but should you have an outbound link for authored by, or you didn't typical relation?
I don't really need them at this point. It just means I'd have twice as many links, which is just twice as much work for a lot of the things I want to do. And at the moment, I'm doing quite a lot of querying that's based on. So here's a map.
Did you create the links yourself, or?
Yeah. Okay. So no, some I did automatically. Some I did manually. So for instance, because the ACM library, when I first started this, was just, it was actually bare tables. It was written in HTML tables, really old fashioned. And A, you're not allowed to web scrape it, and B, it had no usable structure. So I was going in, plus the fact that, especially in the early papers, much of the data which had been recovered, washed out of OCR text, was just full of errors. So I was actually needing to read everything and manually correct it as I went. So yeah, this is a labor of love that's probably taken me 2 or 3 years to get to this point.
So Mark, considering what you just said there, I am going to have a meeting with the head of ACM at some point in the next few weeks because of Bint and Visual Meta. Could we maybe here take your hard work and collaborate so that imagine someone downloads a PDF from ACM, comes across a citation or an author name, and instead of just a normal stuff, something really rich can open up and they can do an analysis of the ACM network. Wouldn't that add a huge value to how they can
yeah, absolutely. And so
their stuff?
This is effectively, this is going in as a short paper this year to say this is the data we're working on, probably to give a better report next year. So I've done other things, like I can show. So this is the participate. One of the things that gets talked about a lot at the moment is the sort of relative contributions by men and women. So this shows, for instance, so the blue is papers in any given conference, a percentage of papers that have at least one woman author. And the ones in orange are where the first author is a woman. And it's actually slightly better than I'd imagined. But it doesn't surprise me. It didn't surprise me. It's quite high early on because I know there were quite a lot of people in the field when Hypertext started. But again, it's doing this sort of thing. That required me to basically work out the gender of 2,400 people. And I got it down to that it's about 1% left who are Chinese, and even my Chinese colleagues can't tell me. And there is a point where it's a difficult thing, especially these days when, people sort of take their personal data more seriously. There's a limit to how far I want to push to sort of complete the data set. But it's useful in that you can now actually see a metric for something that people talk about a lot, but not normally based on any facts. And I mentioned earlier, this is the conference. So for Gunter, this is the sort of data I'm now able to pull out. My real desire is to export the data that's in Tinderbox into a large R table, and then use R tidyverse and bookdown to create an output. So I can effectively export the data into a narrative or through R Shiny into an interactive website. And that's a ton of work in itself, because one of the things that is driving me in this is the point that Frode's just made. Why do we not get more usable data back? Why can't we have these interactive tools? And I think the problem is twofold, well, threefold. One is I think the library function in a lot of journals and websites is basically something that no one wants to spend money on. It's probably then put together by a mix of librarians who aren't particularly interested in anything except the sort of structure of the content, and whoever they have on their web team who's probably more excited about having, whizzy pull down menus than the usability of the content. Yeah. So you can't pull these sort of graphs out, but you sort of should be able to in this day and age. Now, it might be a lot of work to go back and do previous years, but now when we're not constrained by a cost constraint we don't have is printing to paper. I very much doubt whether anyone's buying paper copies of conference journals now. So there is no reason to have the minimum number of items in it that you in a sense can get away with without making the thing much more expensive.
So we're very lucky in this group, Mark, to have exactly the people we have here, because imagine if we all really dig into this. And for my part, I do something really simple inside Reader, that once we come across something that is in here, it launches a thing on the web. Mm-hmm. That thing on the web, obviously built by Gunter. But what is so cool is we have Adam here. He's now interested in learning about spatial hypertext from this. So we have an actual use case. You know, so how can we possibly augment Adam's learning of a specific topic within this? We could do incredible things potentially.
Because one of the things that hasn't quite come to, it's very immature in Tinderbox at the moment, is, wait, can't respond. Okay, it's doing. It's a thing called the hyperbolic view.
Shut down Excel. That's probably your big hog right there.
So, as I say, this is hard to use because one of the things, it's a bit like a timeline. It shows the problem that just what you need in this sort of a view is you need filters. You need to have link types. You need. So one of the things that frustrates me is you can't go into something or say go into Wikipedia and say, show me all the things that are no more than 4 link distances from here, filter it by the following things, and then I get, this is a spatial hypertext or a form of. And I'm hoping that we can get Mark Bernstein sufficiently interested to do some more work on this, because at the moment, it's hard to use, and it potentially offers so much as a way of actually interacting with things. And this is why I was interested in the Weblo project that Freud did with
Chris
Gutteridge. Sorry, yeah.
Well, one thing that we learned in the Weblo is that it also gets messy.
Yeah,
I would be amazingly happy if we could do a test version where all we can do is what we can do in the concept map in Author, meaning you click on your initial thing and you have one single dimension available, item in any direction. All right, so let's say you click on Wendy Hall and then you get her publications, her co-authors, whatever it is, it doesn't matter, only one. And if you then click on that, that then gets in the center. Very much zigzag, Ted Nelson style, right? And if you have that, then you can do a very fast traversal of a huge system without having to worry about the massive spread.
No, absolutely, because at the moment, this thing is spinning its wheel because it's probably trying to plot. Each time I touch the screen, it's basically going back to about, I don't know, 10,000 items and trying to change lots of things it doesn't need. So that there are some real challenges in making things here. And sometimes you do want a lot of information. But the thing I've learned out of this is far closer to something usable than going to the sort of current network graph tools that were designed, that mainly came out of people looking at social networks, which are fine for graph theory, but they're really not very good for anything else.
There's nothing wrong with these massive overviews at all, but it is a different beast. You don't carry around a map you don't carry around a physical globe to find the local news agents. Right, so was it Schneiderman who did the whole zoom in, zoom out kind of stuff? So keep possibly that as it is, but also if we as a community can just build a really basic local Wendy Hall, these are the things, jump around, and that's it, and leave this for the next stage. It could be really impressive for ACM and what came out of your paper.
Yeah, because the other type of aspect of, since we were talking about spatial hypertext earlier, is, in fact, I'm going to close this down because it's just struggling to cope. But when that's gone, I'll just show, probably useful, might be useful for, oh, it's crashed. Come on.
Raphael, yeah?
Yeah, you were mentioning the part to have filters in that. And I was wondering if Tinderbox had an API that we can connect to, because I could make different visualizations on me using different boards, because the information is very structured. It's perfect. So
that's a very good point.
Well, one of this is the map view, which is Tinderbox is sort of, in a sense, it's sort of unique tool because it's very freeform like this. You can put things where you want. And this is where I get the sort of jigsaw metaphor. You just throw all the pieces on the table and we say, all right, we'll put the red bits here and, they're different. So we'll put the blue bits down there. There's not a single line on here. There's no linkage. In the underlying outline, these are just all these are all within the same container in the outline. line. That's how this trick is done. The problem is, of course, then if you nest anything, because I can actually nest things. So I can put this note here is now inside that one, and if I was to go to the outline, it's there. It's easier to show you some of the other things. So there's a sort of tree map view, which is, has the nesting.
So
but the other thing, it's got very strong export. So I can export this as tabular data quite easily. The socking grape, which is probably easier, or I could probably do it as JSON. I can, most simple formats like that.
Because we already have a JSON importer, it's already done. So if I can show you the structure,
yeah,
and
I'll stop sharing.
You could define, how the JSON is. It would be, of course, we would have to debug it a little bit, but you would just export it as JSON, and I can import it directly on me, and it would create all the cards automatically.
Yeah, I'm just looking. Actually, I can do this. This will help. I just can show you. I mean, just to give you an indication of what's under the hood. So the file is just XML. The one, because it has a rich text, the sort of the text part of the note, if you're thinking of it as a note-taking device, has you can do RTF. So what actually happens, he's just scrolling down, is none of these I think have got any text, but the text is stored both as plain text, because the link anchors run off they're basically off the character count of the start and end, and so there's an RTF version of the text, so that if you want to recreate that, and that's all done in, I think, base 64 or something, but everything else bar the RTF sections are HTML, are valid XML. And I have documented the structure as well. So, if somebody wanted to go in that way, Tinderbox also has an AppleScript dictionary, which is another vector through which to approach it. But my suspicion is it's almost easier to just dump out all the data. And then, and then people can use a tool of their choice.
How large is that XML file?
Say again?
How many bytes is the XML file? So
they vary.
Okay, I mean the project that you're working on, or multiple files.
I can tell you. 2 seconds. It is. That is 17 megs data. I mean, some people like to use these sort of tools and put images in. I'm quite sort of deliberate in not doing that, because it's easy to handle them externally. And because one of the starting points of the tool was as a blogging tool, it's very easy to go out, create HTML, and you can just reference external pictures. And in fact, current development as such is to make it easier to almost use view stuff internally. I see Peter's been waiting patiently with his hand up, so let me get a word in edgeways.
Okay, I'm pasting in a link to Cyberspace First Steps. I mentioned that book on a few occasions. It really had a brilliant approach to dealing with high-dimensional data. And the idea was that you could have linked visualizations where a point within one visualization would be unfolded to open into another visualization. It basically did it with the cutaway box with the back wall, the side wall, and the floor of the box visible. And you'd assign different dimensions of the data to the 3 axes in the box. Then, as you moved a 3D cursor around within that space, the location of the cursor would constitute a query into that 3-dimensional slice out of the higher dimensional space. Then you'd see a graphic with another linked box open up out of the point where your 3-dimensional cursor was in the first box, showing a new box in which you could select which dimensions you were concerned with, and then see the actual objects within that data space.
That sounds a bit small talk like.
Yeah, so basically the idea was that you jump from one to another. Of course, at the time, the technology wasn't there to build implementations of it, so it was an absolutely brilliant idea that never got built or implemented or realized anywhere. Mm-hmm. But I think with today's web technology, maybe WebGL or something, it's doable now. So the neat thing again was you could both see the representation of space with the actual data points in it, or you could treat the space itself as being the query by moving around your cursor within the space. And again, the linked visualization would be the results of the query.
Yeah.
Ben had a student who was working with linked visualizations for a while, I think in the early 90s. And I can't remember, it might have been Chris North, but I'm a little fuzzy. So there might have been some work there. And that was doing Java-based systems. And of course, all of that technology fell by the wayside when Java mutated enough to break the code base. And of course, none of the students who wrote the original code base were still present at the lab when the language changed and morphed enough under them to not be usable anymore. So all of that technology dead-ended because no one could invest the time to go through all of the old code, and frankly, it'd probably be easier to start from scratch at that point. So
Yeah.
I highly commend looking at the Cyberspace First Steps book. It has chapters. Another thing was they had a taxonomy of dimension types and kinds. It was really useful, and you could figure out what dimensions you could encode and just the color and the shape of the point in the space versus which things should be proper spatial dimensions along which you could array things. So if you can find a copy of that book, it's like 2 chapters out of a lot of the book was fluff, but there were cyberspace and proposals and liquid architectures in cyberspace. A couple of chapters were highly technical and really, really good for a potential system designer. And again, that was sort of like buried in a lot of fluff for the overall book. But well worth getting a copy of if you can find one.
One is on its way to me now. I've just been busy on Amazon.
Yeah, actually, there is you can view it on the Internet Archive. So I don't know if that's. I suppose it's legal. I can send you the link. I don't know which edition though.
Yeah.
I just wonder which.
They had a PDF version. I've downloaded one. Perhaps.
Yes, I'm going the paper route.
Yeah.
It's really nice in paper, and there's some beautiful color plates in it that have to be seen.
Yeah.
Except that it can be only shipped in June, so that's why I was looking for a quicker way to. So
And we don't want the FBI or Interpol breaking in on any of you for having grabbed the wrong download file.
Well, I think it's since it's available on the Internet Archive. Yeah, I think that's rather safe. But I was wondering, which chapters do you recommend? So is there's cyberspace and proposals?
Liquid architecture and cyberspace and proposals. Let me grab the book. Hang on, I just have to pop over to the library. Give me a minute.
That's interesting. I didn't really get the part with the 3D mouse though.
I was just thinking, looking at people with their sort of bookshelves behind them. It's like all those early movies where they always have a file system. It has an arm that goes out and grabs a tape, and it's sort of it's a bit like turning around and grabbing a book off the shelf.
This background is better for Frode. It looks nicer. we can squint and discover different books. I can see the book on the 4th shelf on the right.
Yeah.
The red spine.
Okay, I made it back.
Aha!
Oh, and if you're in the PDF, at the moment, page 145 has a representation of the unfolding of intrinsic dimensions into a new set of dimensions. So that shows you what their visualization looked like. Okay, so you have cyberspace and proposals was one of the chapters, and yeah, cyberspace and proposals had the meat of the technical material in the book. Then yes, giving meaning to place semantic spaces. That was the other key chapter. And liquid architectures in cyberspace.
Yeah, well, I've got the PDF as well now, so that's 18.7 megs. Of.
So 145 was the page you're referring to?
Yeah.
Okay.
We discussed unfolding started on 144, and then the actual graphic, figure 7.2 on page 145.
Mm. That's interesting.
Oh, sorry, I was whistling and I wasn't on mute.
So what does the illustration mean? So just trying to wrap my head around it. It's on page 145. Can you explain it again, please?
Okay, the notion is the space to the lower left is the original origin space. And that's representing 3 spatial dimensions, 3 extrinsic dimensions. Then the point that you see there, labeled point P, with the XZ coordinates, the XY and the YZ coordinates, would represent a query into the 3 dimensions represented within the first cube. Then the little fold-out expansion to the open cube facing the opposite direction represents a new 3-dimensional space that corresponds to the points that are all compacted into the first point in the original mother visualization. So everything that's conflated in the original visualization at that point, all those objects then open up into 3 additional dimensions. And actually you can have more, because you could also have color if you were in a color version. So you could have color as an intrinsic dimension in addition to the 3 extrinsic dimensions. Color itself, if you wanted to be really funky about it, you could consider the 3 color components separately, but then you're getting past the range of the human visual perception system to be able to distinguish between one another. So they really don't recommend doing too much with color beyond a handful of core values. So the second visualization is showing any objects that would be within that point in the first visualization. You could chain these to take out 3 dimensions at a time to do queries into, 100-dimensional space if you needed to. And the idea again is you find a point in one space, then you open that point up into a new visualization, select which dimensions you care about on the new visualization, and of course, in a real world system, you'd be able to name and save these queries to be able to get at things very quickly. And again, you could also see points within one of these visualizations representing actual documents or data objects, or you could treat the point as being the query itself. So if there's nothing there, that's telling you that there's nothing there, but you could push and move that point around and also rapidly scan. They had another spot elsewhere in the book where they represented scrubbing through a huge database just by moving the point in one of the 3-dimensional cubes, and then the corresponding daughter visualization would be rapidly updating to show what was available along the other dimensions in the secondary space.
And how does it compare to, say, zigzag?
I guess just that you're working in visual. Actually, the 2 could probably be merged. You could probably unify the zigzag model and this visualization into one system. So intuitively, they're compatible with each other.
So, and the coordinates, they can represent anything or any aspect. So I could say I have a dimension, I don't know, citations for instance, or what are the dimensions supposed to represent?
The whole idea is you'd choose which, as long as they're a sequenceable dimension, you could use them in that sort of, let's see now. They had a taxonomy of dimension types and time. Let's see if I can find what page that was on.
Hey, Mark, I asked the guys here for the development, and they said that it would be possible if you could export like just a couple entries, like 3 or 4 entries, then we can test it out.
So what do you want as JSON?
Yeah, it could be either JSON or just CSV.
Yeah.
Because any methods, or maybe it's export 2 or 3 different kinds, and we'll see which one is the best.
I was going to say, yeah, it probably Tab Delim and Jason seem the safest. I always find comma separated breaks at some point, unless you're using really simple stuff.
I found the key chapter. You want to take a look in chapter 9, Giving Meaning to Place Semantic Spaces by Alan Wixelblatt. And he identified kinds of dimensions, which can be relative and absolute, and dimension types, which can be linear, array, quantum, nominal, ordinal, or functional. We had a great discussion of that. So basically, what you'd want would be dimensions that would have an intrinsic sequence to them. One thing they say is that you could use an ordering just on names. So you could, worst case scenario, you just have the names of each of the points in the space and you sort them alphabetically to impose an order on it, because you need the order in order to spread the points out over the dimension when you're doing them as an extrinsic dimension in a visualization. But it's really hard to compress all those chapters into 2 seconds. So you really want to read the chapters.
Yeah. Okay. But I got.
It'll give you lots of ideas.
Yeah. Thanks.
You're talking about the cyberspace book now. Sorry, I had to step away. I had a really annoying phone call.
Yes, I was talking about cyberspace books and their idea of linking visualizations and using a point-in-one visualization to represent query parameters with the results represented in a linked visualization. And that also would let you rapidly scrub over a whole bunch of different queries, because you're just sort of like pushing your point of interest in a query space and then having all the results instantaneously updated in the daughter result space.
Hang on, which, do you have an image for that?
Page 145.
145.
Here, I think it was 7.2.
Hold on, I can put it up on screen. I'll get back to that page. Where are we? 145, that's 211. Come on, 153, almost there. Too far. Oh, there we go. Okay, stand by, I'll just share.
Yeah, that's not complicated at all.
Have you found it?
Yeah.
Fred?
Yeah, and my phone,
Yeah, you have. Okay, so I won't. Well, I can.
My full sarcasm voice is on there.
It's this. I've just put it up on shared up on screen for people.
Oh, you too, both of us. Oh, okay. You did it from there. That's cool. Yeah, I mean, I think that may be a little beyond most users' ability to literally grasp. But it's definitely somewhere to go towards.
Yeah.
But it seems there is a bit of an appetite here to take marked data and look at it in different ways. So that's very exciting.
It makes me think of a VR library or something where you can keep unfolding things and finding different information and connecting them.
Hi, Jerry.
Hello, sorry, couldn't come earlier. Hello.
That's okay. We're talking about Mark Anderson. He's gone through the Hypertext conference and put all that data of all the articles into a huge Tinderbox project, just oversimplify it. And we're looking at useful ways to extract that and use that. And we're looking at Adam here as a new person to the notion of hypertext, at least in this context, and how potentially interactions and views could help him navigate this data. Was that an okay summary, guys? Various levels of vertical head movements, I guess.
Yes. 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 It was adequate.
So, somewhat related to this, have anyone read or glanced at Even Ezra's new book, Lines of Thought? Have you seen that?
Tim, is that Tim Ingalls?
No, Even Ezra.
All right. No,
lines of thought. She covers basically medieval representation thought diagrams. The horizontal trees of sentence trees that monks and many others used for both presenting but also gaining knowledge for themselves, or as margin notes, annotations for Bible text and so on. And it's really, that book is so good, and it's very related to what, or somewhat related to what Frode is doing, because there is one type of graph that is a concept map where you let things point to each other, giving a kind of an orientation view. But there is also the kind of directional graphs where an argument, a line of thought, not really a flow diagrams. I think they look very ugly in general, but more to kind of, if you take a sentence or a paragraph and map it out more spatially, because we have a big compression here with the comma is doing very many things, like the Oxford comma. It's a pause, it's a separation of many things. So this is a way of visualizing this, and horizontal tree diagrams. And I've been playing with this since last Friday. Instead of doing my homework and creating a docuverse, I've been playing with this kind of, so it's more a directional, how you take this big concept map and put it more into a line of thought diagram that you then can linearize or more into text. And I think it's a very fruitful way of thinking.
Links, please.
Links?
Link, please. Because it's probably obviously not the one that you're talking about.
I knew I recognized the title because my copy's not arriving till next week, and now I want to get on with reading it.
It's an excellent book. It's really, really, I've made so many notes in it already. She's really a sharp writer. I think she should really be in the next volume. Her thought diagrams.
Yeah, definitely. I will try to find this person.
Could you link it? Because I got my Zoom on an iPad, so it's really disconnected from it. It's the opposite of hyper.
Yeah.
What was
I've linked it. It's in the chat.
Cool. Yeah.
It's also somewhat related to Tufte's stacked lists or graphical sentences.
Yeah.
A way of taking things that are alternatives and putting them over each other instead of in a line, the sequential order. And I think it has use cases for the, what's this?
No, keep talking. I want to show something after you finished what you're saying.
Okay. I lost it. I started reading your text.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I think this was Peter last week. This is a very basic thing with Liquid. So you launch it into Liquid and it does the basic breaks, does a single break on comma. To me, I need this very often if I'm going to read something. I think I'm part dyslexic, but this is really, really simple stuff. I think what you're talking about is very important to go much further and to allow us to automatically and manually get out of the gray boxes. So it just spurred that thought. I've ordered the book.
And there could be different versions. One done by software trying to analyze things, and there is software already that can try to get a sense of the different phrases and make it an outline or something else. But it is also the notion of having an annotation doing this, that the person can do it, like a typographer of the old days, actually making it presentable. A text that is very linear, making it easier to read. And but in hypertext, we could do that as an annotation. So someone else could do that. Take an ordinary text and map things out. Which characters or which paragraph lines or phrases should be exploded in which places. And I've been doing some prototypes. I will try to show you in the next weeks.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant. You all know about liquid text for iPad, right? That also
For iPad?
Yeah, for iPad. He also has a Mac version that
liquid
allows
text.
you to pull things out in interesting ways as well. Worth having a look at. But yeah, I look forward to this book. But on the main topic of today, so I'm very happy that Raphael and Mark are going to try to do some kind of a thing. Günther, did you also want some of that data to see what it looks like? And how enthusiastic are we to try to develop a visualization of this stuff?
Well, I'd like to have the XML file. So I mean, it's
Sure.
3 years of work. So, but I'd be very grateful for that. So I think it will be very useful. And as for the visualizations, I don't know, but I have to play around with the file first, with data to figure out what makes sense, or first of all what I want to know, and then figuring out what kind of interfaces you probably want.
Yeah, I'm happy to share the data. I mean, because one of the parts of the thing is that I'm aware that I'm really doing is trying to also do there's a sort of meta project around this, just to say that, well, not just this conference, but another conference or a journal. What in a digital age, how should we be thinking about curating this? So there's especially with things like conferences, there's so much other than the main papers that is actually of use to the community who study that field, that we shouldn't just be leaving it on the floor. So, how do we make this available? How do we ensure it just doesn't go and die somewhere on a website? Because, for instance, workshops often evolve into conferences, or something starts, a subject starts as a tiny side show in a conference, say, and then grows out to be something itself. So that's of use for people who are maybe looking from a historical perspective, quite apart from those who are just working in that field. And so I part of this is an exercise, certainly things I'm learning by just constantly going back. It's this thing, you have to keep rewalking the data set, and you find new nuances and new bits you can find out. But hopefully that will start to extract some patterns that can be generalized to help other people, if only to save them time, if they wanted to, to start recreating the same rich data sets.
Yeah, and one of the most shocking things when I started working on my PhD was how cumbersome it is to find stuff and then go through it, even if it's on one single site. Peter?
Yes, there was some work in the information studies community in the subfield of bibliometrics, looking at the evolution of sections of literature and how they branch off from each other. And that was using, I think it was cladistics was the term they were using, but it was actually trying to create branching visualizations of how the area of literature was trying to grow and contract over time. So that might be worth looking into. I have no idea who any of the people are in it. I just have like a vague existence awareness of stuff having been done like that. There was a text on similarity structure analysis that had some of the underlying maths related to that sort of thing. And I think there might have actually been a book titled Cladistics that covered those diagrams specifically, looking in terms of biological evolution. So there was a group of evolutionary biologists who were actually trying to do visualizations of the tree of life and how different subgroups were branching off of the underlying phylums and stuff like that. So that'd be worth having a look at.
Yeah. I mean, a difficult area this thing also is the fact that the sort of state of play is certainly on the software side is that most of the tools really require a fairly good degree of sort of computer knowledge or sort of software-y type knowledge. So the frustration is that the people who will probably gain the most of the visualization when it's done are people who aren't interested in that aspect, how it's made. And so there's this difficult phase at the moment of trying to work out from both ends. It's so what information do we want people see? What information do we need to enable us to visualize that? And then what is the tool that does it? And I don't think that comes out of any one place. Because it's like I've spent 3 years at Southampton trying to get anyone interested in just doing some visualization with the lure saying, well, here is a fairly complete data set. So this is like a real world thing that you can do something with. But that's doesn't seem to be where people's head is at, which it seems odd in a way. I mean, I had imagined there'd be more inquisitiveness about what you could do with such things, because I think once you start to crack the visualizations, you really open up the data to a much wider range of users.
I think
because they don't have to understand the underlying abstractions.
I think there may also be a bit of a kind of a reaction, as I think Raphael was sharing last time, that visualizations are great, but if they're done in a relatively rigid way, it becomes ghettos, information.
Yep,
ghettos.
absolutely. Yep.
And with early web science, it was Twitter doing this here and people there, and forever and ever. So also for this, I would really be horrified to see another app. It has to be done in a really, really open way, and that's what we're all talking about anyway. Because
I think the real revelation is to be able to do, in a sense, the first turn of the crank. Because one of the really interesting things that come out of that, say, what is missing? So we'll think, I know what will happen will be, just short of the thing we want to make, because we'll be missing some information that either I haven't managed to collect, or maybe in this case, doesn't even exist because nobody bothered to collect it. And so if nothing else going forward, we'll know that if we want to do this sort of thing, we need to be collecting these seemingly unrelated facets of the work. And I think that's another area that's just, not being sort of considered. So to a certain extent, we're all sitting around as consumers waiting for somebody else to make this. And I don't say that unkindly. I think it's just the nature of things, because most of us very few of us will understand all parts of it. And then it's only by happy chance if you then butt up against someone who has another bit of the jigsaw that you don't, an understanding of a different axis of it, that you can begin to put this stuff together.
There is also something to be said for the inside out view, because like if I get a list from you with pages, just like Peter did a moment ago with a recommendation of a specific page far deep into a book, I can go outwards myself and look at the references and so on. But so it would be very interesting to have the other curation, small snippets, small fragments from deep within the best parts, the gold nuggets of the literature. Because for me, coming back, I can't really read all the text on spatial hypertext. So what I would like to have is the best selections from people who have researched this. Mark's gold nuggets from the archives, and start there and then look outwards. But there is no real good way of storing those collections. Of course, you can do a PDF or a web page, but really having a permanent way of storing the collections.
Well, Google Books can be your friend. For instance, I saw a citation to an appendix figure in a book, and I just typed in the name of the figure, figure 11.5 or whatever it was. I don't remember the exact number, but the point was I fed that into Google Books along with the title, the caption that was on the figure. So figure number and the caption. And that actually pulled up the book, and it gave me a preview of the page, giving me the actual chart that I was looking for without any muss or fuss as the preview for the book. So I found the one piece of information out of the book that I needed just by giving a unique string for Google Books to run through. Unfortunately, the book itself had been scanned and it just spat back the one figure I wanted, saving me having to go through interlibrary loan just to get a single chart out of the book.
So what we want here is that part a bit more automated then. So when Mark is doing that curation of the best of spatial hypertext, our tools should really have that link to deep down to the maybe the Google Books page.
Yes, no, I've done the same as Peter. I'm obviously unlucky because normally it gets me to a page that said, this page intentionally, copyright material not included. So it's there, I just can't see it.
Edgar just wanted to show you, talking of copyrighted and things. Police did
Hey.
today. The police came to visit.
Ah,
And do you want to mention that? Do you want to tell everybody you did ballet today? Say it.
So we write pretend unicorns at ballet.
Pretend unicorns and ballet. That's fantastic.
We were pretending.
Okay, say bye-bye then.
Bye bye. Mommy?
All right. All right, everyone. Yeah, we interrupted, sorry. Right, well, I mean, we're over time anyway, but we have gotten somewhere useful. It was really nice what you showed in Tinderbox, Mark, but more impressive is the work that you've done. And obviously, I'm going to do 10 seconds to remind you, I really want to see Visual Meta have a role in this.
yeah, I think that's that's something I'll fold into, because as I say, the thing I'm racing to do this week is literally to get a sort of taster out there to say that they're doing this. Probably for that, I'll release a limited set just so people can play around with it. I'm prepared to release much richer set to people I sort of know. It's just that what I don't want to do is to release all my research before I've reported it. And have somebody else do it.
Of course, but the reason I say Visual Meta is not just because it's my ego, to be honest, and my work. It is also whatever way that someone else can come along and use it. And it may not be as a full data set, because ACM may not like that. It may be as simple as we get to a point where someone is looking a node in this thing and they can then copy that as Visual Meta, and maybe that's enough.
Well, again, if the information is
open between systems, that's
all. And if there are sort of things like libraries who have some of the information that you might want in Visual Meta available, say by an API, or even worst case could be scraped from a page, and assuming there's no impediment to doing that, then also there's nothing, that it potentially one can enrich a document by adding the missing Visual Meta to it, which is another way of looking at this. And so I know it's a good thing, because also it's another idea of sort of trying to push forward the idea of Visual Meta, if only to pull out the arguments of people who may have very strong reasons for not doing it, because that's still useful to know, because they're all things to be overcome.
Do we have any kind of authority control in the ACM Digital Library?
Sorry?
Do we have any kind of authority control?
I
have so much
think
frustration with overlapping names and trying to distinguish between whether it's one person or multiple people.
No, that's a pot mess. I have been down that rabbit hole. It's remarkably difficult. And in fairness, I think it's about one or two people. So it's one of these sort of zombie processes almost. It's not as if there are people looking at it all the time. So, I've found papers that were missing and tried to provide them, but there's no one you can interact with. Because obviously you need to prove your bona fides as a start. It's unreasonable that anyone can just say, I found this, and then expect it to be put in, because there are always bad actors around. So, I was all ready to sort of say to someone, this is who I am, this is why I'm doing it, this is, the background, here is the thing, and you can validate it and stick it in the right place. In this case, it's one of Halatz's keynotes that's often referred to, but you can't find anywhere in print, because keynotes weren't recorded at the time. And in fact, somebody did take notes, and I have found another copy on the archive. I got it by writing to a librarian at the university where the talk was given, and by sheer chance we found it. But as it's part of the sort of the 7 issues trilogy of his speeches, it's sort of quite important in the field. And this is just the sort of stuff that is getting lost down the cracks at the moment, and our future selves will not thank us if we don't gather this stuff up.
So there's
Yeah,
two.
the authority control rabbit holes a mess. I mean, I've actually gotten to the point where I've been like emailing multiple people with the same name and asking, "Are you the one who wrote this? Are you the one who wrote this?"
There are at least, I think, as was mentioned earlier, there are at least two categories of users for this. One is historians, and the other one is people who want to use the knowledge.
Mm.
I was reading this book earlier today by this Anthony
Grafton, yeah.
And it's really interesting. It goes into early medieval printing on how basically people were just quoting people. It was literally cut and paste jobs, but they also had to have link types because they had to specify, I'm citing this because this is bad, which was interesting from the very beginning of printing. But the reason I want to talk about the two use cases is, you know, Mark Anderson is clearly a historian and he cares about the shape of the whole volume. But then Adam, and I'm speaking for you as a real and fictional character, doesn't care about the entire body of history. He cares about right now, it's
small quotes, no overview.
Yeah, you want to learn stuff to make a better system based on what these people did. And that is a very, very specific use case. And I really think that we should try to optimize for that, the extraction of knowledge. And I think that most visualizations and most interactions are just showing off buttons and views. So that's why I really think we should embrace Adam here as the person. Does this help solve Adam's problem of what is this stuff? What's the feeling for that? Does that make sense? Are we solving the?
Yeah, well, it makes sense for me, of course, because that use case is quite common. I think you want to know, to find we all know, we want to find good information in the treasure troves, in the books behind us, and in the dark corners of the internet. We really need to extract the good things.
Yeah, because
and cure it then.
That's why I brought up this book. That's because of this whole thing of so much of books and writing is to explain stuff that already exists. You know, as I can say it better than you. I can interpret the ancients better than you. You know, it almost gets tiring, but clearly there is a use for that. So if we cannot make a book, but if we can make a system that does that, that it can accommodate much more viewpoints, right? So, you know, we keep asking, what is the knowledge? What is the relationship? What is the knowledge? Anyway, that was my sermon.
No, I'd say also, for my part, I'm sort of, it's not necessarily historical. It's just a realization that, you know, that to do all these sort of facets that people want to use requires some structure. And if we all just wait for somebody else to make the structure, we won't get any. So it's a matter of sort of. I guess it's a thing of I've got past asking, you know, is it necessary? Which was the first question everybody asked when I started showing people this data set. You know, what's the point? I said, well, you know, we won't know till we finish because we can't. You know, you're saying what's the point because you don't know what it'll look like when it's finished. So until you can see it. You know, so we got to start by putting this out there so we can have an informed debate about its worth.
Yeah, we completely agree with you, Mark, and we're very grateful for this work because it represents a specific piece of work, but also a general principle. And also you cannot navigate if you don't have something to navigate around.
Yeah, I put a pertinent picture in the chat.
Click to open. Yeah, that's, are you trying to manage your knowledge? Don't think that's captured on the video.
I don't miss Clippy at all.
Sorry, no.
I'll just share my screen so it's captured for It's this guy. And
I like that.
Yeah.
I don't. There was a conversation. Well, actually, I think it's across the Tinderbox forum where we were going to and fro about you know, knowledge tools and things. And I thought yes, but this is in a sense where we're stuck a lot of the time. it is that sophisticated, and it should be better.
We may have to send Peter to bed without dinner. Mrs. Clippy, it says right here. Yeah, so the thing with my own work with author, having to shift a bit away from students and make it a bit more broader, kind of represents a lot of things what's going on here. We have to help people actually find and use knowledge. That's what we've been discussing forever and ever. I can see Jury's head falling off with agreement, but that's what it is. But still, that's not so easy necessarily, because it's easy to build like an encyclopedia. But then what? Right, so we have great opportunities with this body of knowledge to make a learning system out of it. So it's very exciting. So yeah, good luck writing it up this week, Mark. And don't forget to cite Visual Meta somehow.
No, I wasn't joking when I said no. I think I hadn't thought about that, but I think it's already, it's something that I would want to work into it, especially for the body of work that hopefully will come out of this for next year's conference. I mean, it won't necessarily take all year to do, but I mean, that I am quite interested as to how we have this richer metadata layer attached to things.
Yeah. Anything else for today, guys?
I just put in a link to the original, the first vision thing, and nice little annotation of Mark's stuff. Recommended. It's a nice read. But I wanted to ask. I really would like to be able to occasionally just tweet a juicy quote, but I still don't have somewhere to link to. Which is sort of. We should have something like that, either on Twitter or give where is it that I should be linking if I tweet something like that?
Mm-hmm.
You don't need to link, but you need to be able to address.
Yes, that's what I mean. Yeah. I mean, obviously okay. I can put your Twitter handle there, which is obviously a good thing. But I just wanted to, before I just do things like that, I wanted to clarify with you or get advice. How would it be the best? And the best thing would be if other people would do it. Best thing would be if other people would annotate here and there and just keep it turning up. I think that's the way I do work, and it really brings people in who are really glad to read. I mean, that's the whole point. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is something we've discussed a couple of times here, Jerry, of how you should be able to link to something that's in a document that's on your hard drive. So you should be able to highlight something in a PDF that is wherever, tweet it or whatever. And if someone has that document, it should just open to that right section. Yes, that is an important thing.
No, I mean, obviously, I can, the document can be on IPFS or whatever. So that I mean, for the web, that wasn't what I was asking. What I was asking is what's the best way to identify that this is the first volume of the vision of the Vision 2020 or text or future of text. That's what I'm asking. A good landing page, because it will be an opportunity to sort of to publicize this stuff.
So you want to have the book turned into HTML?
No. It's fine as it is. I probably annotated an old version. That's not that. I wasn't asking about that. I'm asking about where should I, the action. Where should I, when people, you can put a link on a tweet, which people.
So what's the link to the master PDF? The canonical link.
Just future text publishing. Here, I'll put it up.
And Jiri, I responded to your LinkedIn post.
Okay.
So I've sent you a.
Oh yes. I've seen it. Yes. I looked into this beautiful. I think we should stop the video before I respond. But yes, it was brilliant. Yes. Yeah.
Okay, I just posted a link to a Twitter post and the related GitHub archive. Some folks have suddenly discovered the idea that maybe you might want to have your link stored outside of documents, and the whole idea of a link base might just be starting to come back into brilliant new discovery. Never
Yeah,
occurred
yeah,
that there might
yeah.
even be any
Amazing.
literature on it yet.
Amazing, after 50 years, who knows, Yes, indeed. Yes.
Let's just hope the PTO doesn't give them the software patent on it.
Yeah. I think it's in Tad's eulogy. He does say that, saying both of us keep the links outside the file. Yes.
I think that's a completely crazy thing to do.
What? To keep?
To put the links outside. Why put anything outside?
You might not own the thing that you'd like to put the links in. If the links are outside, anyone can come along and add the links.
So the links are a form of annotation.
No, but then they're annotation. That's an entirely different thing. I'm obviously trying to be a little bit controversial. There's nothing wrong with having, sorry, Jerry, I can't remember if you came in when I was waving this book about.
No.
So this is Grafton, relatively new book, talking about early printing. In early printing, a lot of the books were basically just quotes. To earlier books, and it did kind of have link types because it said this is not true, and so on. But there's nothing wrong with having links outside the document, but then that thing becomes a document in my mind. It becomes basically a highlights bit from that book, and there's nothing wrong with doing that. All I'm saying is that a document itself should be completely self-contained, pointing out to the world and having things point to it, absolutely fine. But once things are too distributed in canonical form, so to speak, once this is shredded and put to the winds, we get link rot, we get different systems, we get all kinds of nonsense.
No, that is the other way around. The reason we got link rot is because the links are in the document and the documents change.
Yeah, but if you have a link database outside, that assumes that when I take down my server, that the system updates and sends me an email saying, hey, that document, I've put it somewhere else. Anyway, that's a big discussion.
Okay.
And
yes,
probably
yes,
the solution is to do both.
Yeah.
Keep as much as you can in, but efficiently also put it outside. All right, I put links in to the book here. You can have a direct link to the PDF if you want or whatever, but those are two different levels of links to the book.
Okay.
Only if you could give me the citation information for that book you were holding up and not long enough for me to type in the title of the author.
Inky Fingers, The Making of Books in Early Modern Europe, Anthony Grafton, Inky Fingers.
So he's the one who did the monograph also on footnotes, wasn't he? I think it's the same chap, isn't it?
It's quite delightful. Have you got it, Mark?
Well, it will be arriving tomorrow.
On that bombshell. See you on Friday, everyone.
Okay, have a good week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Good week.